What happens when a daytime television host pushes too far and a Hollywood legend pushes back even harder? What you're about to witness is one of the most explosive moments ever seen on live television. A confrontation so intense it ended with one of daytime TV's biggest personalities walking off her own show and never returning. This is the story of how Joy Behar's tenure on The View came to a shocking halt during what was supposed to be a routine celebrity interview. If you think you've seen heated exchanges on daytime television before, you haven't seen anything. Like this, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment about what you think really happened behind the scenes. Because this story has layers that will absolutely blow your mind. Asterisk, the studio audience at The View buzzed with anticipation as the show returned from commercial break. Joy Behar sat in her usual spot at the Hot Topics table, shuffling her notes one final time before looking directly into the camera. There was a familiar glint in her eye, one longtime viewers recognized instantly. It was the look that signaled she was about to stir the pot. Asterisk, welcome back to The View, Joy announced, her trademark New York accent cutting through the studio air. We're here with Academy Award winner Kevin Spacey, who's joining us to discuss his upcoming independent film project. Kevin, thank you for being here. Asterisk, Spacey, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, sat across from the panel with his hands folded calmly in his lap. His expression was polite, but guarded. The kind of carefully controlled demeanor that had served him well throughout decades in Hollywood. Thank you for having me, Joy, he replied smoothly. It's always interesting to be on live television. The word interesting lingered in the air just a bit longer than necessary. Asterisk, Joy leaned forward slightly, her pen tapping against her notepad in a rhythmic pattern viewers knew well. You know, Kevin, I have to ask, she began, her tone shifting into something sharper. There's been a lot of talk about accountability in Hollywood lately. How do you personally define redemption? Asterisk. The question landed heavily. Spacey's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, though his media-trained smile remained intact. I think redemption is about the work we do moving forward, he answered carefully. It's about contributing positively to the artistic community and focusing on the craft that brought us all together. Asterisk, but is it really that simple? Joy pressed. Can someone just decide they've moved forward and expect everyone else to move with them? Asterisk, the studio grew noticeably quiet. Even the other co-hosts seemed to sense that Joy was venturing into territory that hadn't been discussed during pre-production. Spacey leaned back in his chair, his composure steady, but his eyes now locked on Joy. I think we live in a society where people are allowed to rebuild their lives, he said. That's what I'm doing, focusing on my work and the projects that matter to me. Asterisk, but what about the people who can't just rebuild? Joy shot back. What about the people whose lives were affected by actions taken in this industry? Don't they deserve more than someone saying they're focusing on their craft? Asterisk, the tension in the studio became palpable. Camera operators exchanged glances, and the producer could be seen gesturing frantically from the control booth. Joy seemed oblivious to it all. Spacey, however, shifted. His polite smile faded, replaced by something colder and more deliberate. Asterisk, Joy. I came here today to talk about my new film, which explores themes of human resilience and artistic expression, he said. I'm not sure what specific situations you're referring to, but I think it's important not to make assumptions about people's experiences or motivations. Asterisk, oh, I'm not making assumptions, Joy replied, her confrontational edge now fully on display. I'm asking direct questions about accountability, something that seems to be in short supply these days, especially among people who think their talent gives them a free pass. Asterisk, Spacey's hands tightened around the arms of his chair. When he spoke again, his voice carried a firmness that hadn't been there before. Joy, I need to stop you right there. You're making very serious implications on live television. and I think you need to be extremely careful about the territory you're walking into. Asterisk, but Joy was fully committed now. I am being careful, she fired back. Careful to ask the questions that need to be asked. The questions other people have been too intimidated to raise. Asterisk, intimidated. Spacey repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's an interesting choice of words. Are you suggesting other interviewers have been intimidated by me? Asterisk, I'm suggesting it's time someone asked the hard questions without worrying about ruffling feathers, Joy replied. Maybe it's time someone said what everyone else is thinking. Asterisk. Spacey fell silent. The pause stretched across the studio like a tightened wire, and when he finally looked up, it was clear the conversation had reached a breaking point. Asterisk. Kevin finally spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. And what exactly do you think everyone is thinking, Joy? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Joy's co-hosts were now openly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and exchanging worried glances. The audience could sense they were witnessing something spiraling far beyond a typical daytime television interview. Joy, however, appeared energized by the confrontation. Asterisk, I think people are wondering how someone can just show up and expect to be treated like nothing ever happened, Joy said. They're wondering about accountability, about consequences, about whether talent really gives someone a free pass to move on. Asterisk. Kevin's response came with the precision of a seasoned actor who knew exactly how to make every word count. Joy, let me ask you something, he said, his voice carrying a subtle but unmistakable threat. Do you really want to continue down this path on live television? Because once we go there, we can't go back, and I'm not sure you're prepared for where this conversation might lead. Asterisk. The warning in his tone was unmistakable, but Joy Behar had built her career on not backing down. If anything, his words only fueled her determination. Are you threatening me, Kevin? She demanded, her voice slicing through the tension. Because if you are, I think our viewers deserve to know exactly what kind of person they're dealing with. Asterisk. Kevin let out a soft laugh, completely devoid of humor. Threatening you? Joy, I'm trying to save you from yourself. You're walking into a conversation you're not equipped to handle. Making accusations on live television without regard for the consequences. Asterisk. The only consequences I care about, Joy shot back, leaning forward, are the ones that happen when people don't speak the truth. And the truth is that some people think they can rehabilitate their image with a few interviews and expect everyone to forget what happened. Asterisk. What exactly do you think happened, Joy? Kevin asked, his voice dropping to an almost conversational tone that somehow made it more menacing. Because I'm very curious to hear what version of events. You think you know? Asterisk. Joy's co-hosts attempted to intervene. Whoopi could be seen making subtle hand gestures, silently urging Joy to pull back. But Joy was locked in on Kevin as if the rest of the studio no longer existed. I think powerful people got away with things they never should have, Joy said, her voice rising. And I think some of those people are now trying to pretend it never happened. Asterisk. Kevin studied her in silence, calculating his next move. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority that had made him one of Hollywood's most compelling villains. Joy, you're making a very serious mistake. You're confusing having a television show with having actual power. You're confusing being loud with being right. And you're about to learn the difference. Asterisk. Is that another threat? Joy demanded, her voice echoing slightly in the studio. Because I've been threatened by better people than you, and I'm still here. Asterisk. No, Joy, Kevin replied calmly. It's not a threat, it's a promise. You want to play this game? Let's play. But let's be clear on the rules. Asterisk. The studio fell completely silent, broken only by the low hum of the cameras. Even the crew stopped moving, aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. What rules? Joy asked. For the first time, a slight tremor crept into her voice. Kevin smiled. But it was the kind of smile that belonged in a thriller. The rules are simple. Joy, you want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about yours. You want to discuss people's past actions? Let's discuss yours. My past actions. Joy laughed, though the sound was forced. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've built your career attacking people who can't. Fight back, Kevin said, his voice gaining momentum. Countless guests have sat in that chair while you ambushed them with questions they weren't prepared for and accusations they couldn't defend against on live television. Joy's face flushed red. That's called journalism, she snapped. That's called asking tough questions. No. Joy, Kevin replied, his voice now carrying full force. That's called being a bully with a microphone. And the difference between us is that I'm not going to sit here and let you do it to me. You can't intimidate me, Joy said, though her voice was no longer steady. I'm not trying to intimidate you, Kevin answered calmly. I'm pointing out that if you want an honest conversation about behavior, then let's have one. And honestly, Joy, your behavior over the years has been far more destructive than anything I've ever been accused of. The accusation hit Joy like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed before she found her voice. How dare you, she said. How dare you turn this around on me? I'm not turning anything around, Kevin replied smoothly. Responding to your questions with questions of my own. You asked about accountability. I'm asking about yours. You asked about consequences. I'm asking about the consequences of your actions. Joy gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. I've spent my career speaking truth to power. Your actions, Kevin continued, his voice growing stronger. Include the guests you've destroyed with ambush tactics. The careers damaged by reckless accusations, and the people who left the studio humiliated because you thought it made for good television. That's not Joy began. But Kevin cut her off. The young actors who came on this show to promote their first films and left feeling attacked. He continued, his voice unwavering. Joy, I think you're making some very unfair assumptions about my life, Julia said carefully, each word measured. You don't know anything about my journey or the challenges I've faced, do you? Joy shot back immediately, as if she had been waiting for exactly this response. Because from where I'm sitting, your biggest challenge has been choosing which mansion to live in, which designer dress to wear, which premiere to attend, which multi-million-dollar role to accept next. Whoopi finally stepped in more forcefully, her voice carrying the authority of 2 decades of hosting. Okay, Joy, I think we need to No, Whoopi, Joy interrupted, not even looking at her colleague. I think it's time someone asked the hard questions. I think it's time someone called out this whole perfect princess act. For what it really is, a carefully constructed lie designed to sell movie tickets to people who should know better. Julia's face had gone pale, but her voice remained controlled, though the effort was evident. I've never pretended to be perfect. Joy, I've been open about my mistakes, my struggles, my growth as a person and an artist. Have you though? Joy challenged, leaning forward, her body language aggressive and confrontational. Or have you just fed the public the sanitized, publicist-approved version of your life? When was the last time you showed us the real Julia Roberts, not the manufactured product designed to be palatable to mass audiences? The tension in the studio was palpable, almost suffocating. Crew members froze at their posts, unsure whether to intervene or let the disaster unfold. Sarah looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Sunny's face showed genuine distress. And Whoopi appeared to be calculating whether stopping the interview would cause more damage than letting it continue. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Julia said, her voice finally showing signs of strain from the emotional toll this was taking. I came here today to talk about my work, to connect with your audience, not to be personally attacked on live television. Joy leaned back in her chair with visible satisfaction, clearly enjoying the discomfort she was causing, feeding off it. Like sustenance, double quotes. Oh, is that what this is? An attack? She said with mock innocence. I thought this was just honest conversation. Isn't that what talk shows are supposed to be about? Honesty, real dialogue. Or do you only want to participate in conversations where everyone tells you how wonderful you are? There's a difference between honesty and cruelty. Joy, Julia replied, her composure beginning to crack, emotion breaking through the professional facade. There's a difference between asking tough questions and deliberately trying to hurt someone for your own entertainment. Hurt someone. Joy laughed again, that same harsh, cutting sound making everyone uncomfortable. Sweetie, if a few honest observations hurt your feelings, maybe you're not as strong as you pretend to be. Maybe that's the real issue here. You can't handle reality intruding on your carefully constructed fantasy world. The words hung in the air like a physical slap, and Julia's face flushed red. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see how Hollywood sweetheart would respond to such a direct personal insult delivered live to millions of viewers. Strong. Julia repeated slowly, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level that somehow carried more power than any amount of shouting. You want to talk about strength, Joy? Let me tell you something about real strength. The confrontation had reached its breaking point, the moment where pretense falls away and raw truth emerges. Joy Behar had pushed and pushed, assuming that Julia, trained by decades in Hollywood to smile and deflect, would never truly push back. She had miscalculated badly, underestimating the steel beneath the silk, the fire beneath the warmth. Julia's voice, when she continued, carried a weight that made everyone in the studio lean forward unconsciously. Strength is sitting here and listening to you tear me down for no reason other than your own entertainment. Strength is not responding to your cruelty with cruelty of my own. Strength is maintaining my dignity in the face of someone who's clearly forgotten what dignity means. Joy's eyes lit up with what could only be described as malicious delight. As if Julia's response was exactly what she had been waiting for, trying to provoke all along. Oh, now we're getting somewhere, she exclaimed, her voice rising with excitement. There's that fire I knew was hiding under all that sweetness and light. Tell me, Julia, how does it feel to finally drop the act? This isn't an act, Julia said, her voice rising slightly despite her efforts to maintain control. This is me trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism in the face of your unprovoked hostility. This is me trying to remember that. I came here as a guest, not as a target. Unprovoked. Joy scoffed, her expression one of theatrical disbelief. Everything I've said today has been fair game. You're a public figure, sweetheart. You put yourself out there. You open yourself up to criticism. That's the price of fame. And if you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to disappear through her chair. Maybe we should take a quick break, she suggested weakly, glancing desperately at the show's director. No breaks, Joy declared, waving her hand dismissively like a queen, ignoring the concerns of those around her. We're just getting started, Julia. I'm sorry, Julia. Let's talk about your image. Let's talk about how much of your success is based on being pretty versus actually being talented. The gasp from the audience was audible. Several people, looking genuinely angry not at Julia, but at Joy, who seemed determined to destroy someone for no reason other than she could. Whoopi's voice cut through sharply. rare authority in her tone. "Joy, that's enough. This has gone too far." But Joy ignored her, focused entirely on Julia, like a predator that had caught the scent of blood. "I'm just asking questions everyone is thinking, but nobody has the guts to ask. How much of your career is based on your looks? How much is based on playing into male fantasies of the perfect woman? How much is actually based on talent?" Julia's jaw tightened, her hands gripping the arms of her chair so hard it seemed she might crush the wood seam.